good. The standard treating people sense themselves affable and Western independently valuable because the repressed and valuable status of person, the fact the person is sort of creatures that others don't have violated itself, valuable quite apart from what the person is actually violated, constrained against a violation for the sake of invaluability involves contradictory and consequentialism, relies on a non-existent natural personal lens for evaluating moral claims, knows it. Individually, each sometimes choose to undergo some pain or sacrifice for greater benefit, but there's no social harmony with it. Good to undergo some sacrifice for its own good. They're only different individual people with their own lives, using one for the benefit of others, using many benefits of others. Nothing more to use a person in this way does not sufficiently respect and take into account for the fact that he is a separate person, that his is the only life he has is not got some over ground, balancing good from his sacrifice, knows the title forces to upon him, and consequentialism is false. A. Intuitive metaphysical grammars fail. 1. The strict listens we derive belief from what we already believe. 2. Clear. Individual disagreement, since there's no way to provide a reason for someone else is wrong. Therefore, consequentialism is false, since it's founded on an intuition that if action is valuable, to maximize. B. Consequentialism is infinitely regressive because we can never predict every possible outcome of an action. C. Consequentialism is self-defeating. One side constraints are beneficial because they give people predictability they need to pursue their life projects, and people know the rights will not be spontaneously violated for the majority. 2. It imposes an infinite obligation to maximize social good in each individual, so people can never act to make themselves happy. Contention 1 is Iran. The hardline Iran regime is breaking up now. Sanctions let it continue. DOS 1216 Tehran is already the subject of numerous sanctions and has been since 79. No one would argue that sanctions have showed any notable success in changing Iranian behavior apart, removing in a more aggressive direction, strengthening siege mentality among Iran's hardliners, and undercutting landmark culture engagement. The RPSA is not just an effective counterproductive to the goal of garnering necessary international support. Carefully collaborative measures that might work to put pressure on revolutionary guards. One poorly designed sanctions like the RPSA offer Iran's hardliners powerful propaganda lifeline and greater regime consolidation of the moment conservative consensus around unending jihad is starting to crack up. While many Iranians blame their government for economic troubles, it doesn't mean they don't blame the U.S. workings in Iran. Analyst Maloney noted, the Islamic Republic has experienced a number of episodes of severe economic pressure, with none generated the conformed policy moderation that is sponsored by LSA, RPSA, or any of the other manifold punitive measures against Iran, sending genuinely forecast rather past periods of external pressure facilitating the coalescence of the regime and consolidation with public support and economic constraint that has generated enhanced cooperation among Iran's victim faction. Survival of the Islamic Republic has made more likely by sanctions and U.S.-Iran wars inevitable, absent a transition away from hardliners. Brunner. Pressure is a dangerous thing. There is opposition within Iran. The U.S. can try to apply international pressure that might divide on dangerous community. The U.S. is best shot with peaceful de-escalation of confrontation. 2. Class nuclear and reform. One of them is going to today. First, there's the possibility that Iran's supreme leader will move away from the president, but that doesn't occur. We're headed for military conflict, irrespective of what the U.S. does, and U.S.-Iran war causes extinction. Hirsch. U.S. intervention is likely to be bombing of Iran facilities, including with nuclear bunker busters. It is likely that such an attack will provoke violent retaliation referred internally to the use of larger nuclear weapons by the U.S. U.S. preparing to enter a new gap in air and which will enforce nuclear non-proliferation by the use of nuclear weapons. That the use of tactical nuclear weapons against Iran will usher in a new world order once the U.S. crosses the nuclear threshold. Many more countries will survive to acquire nuclear weapons, but it will have entered a path of no return, leading to global war and unimaginable destruction, and no Russia-China cooperation. Phillips 4.2. Predictability, the U.S. push for another round of sanctions. The Security Council has stalled in the face of Chinese and Russia dragging Beijing considerably more than sanctions could derail diplomatic efforts. Moscow and Beijing remain adamantly opposed to the stiff sanctions necessary to get Iran's attention. Both unsurprisingly continue to advance their own national interests by cultivating closer economic relations with Iran and do not want to see sanctions hamper their own economic interests. And neither country seems to care about Iran's uranium enrichment efforts. Any sanctions that emerge from the Security Council are likely to be toothless thanks to China and Russia. Contention 2. Repealing sanctions guarantees peace with North Korea. 122. North Korea envoys offer a return to halt talks on nuclear disarmament in exchange for lifting sanctions. Korea's foreign ministry released a statement saying that if the history decided to help resolve hostile tensions between North Korea and the U.S. and speed up denuclearization, regime of Kim Jong-il will exist only because of enforced escalation. If gradual overturns of peace are made, the regime of North Korea will be made obsolete, and conflict between the U.S. and North Korea is inevitable unless a diplomatic solution is reached. GPI 9. North Korea is sliding towards an aggressive stance against U.S. hardliners who lead against military forces with potential consequences in North Korea simultaneously more powerful. Washington Post published a detailed article on malnutrition problems making North Korea even more unstable, and U.S. North Korea while conflict means extinction. Troy 2. Any military strike initiated against North Korea will explode into thermonuclear exchange. North Korea runs a more advanced biological, chemical, nuclear weapon program, targets American military bases and developing missiles that could reach the lower 48 states. The North Koreans will use all their resources in their arsenal to put a full-scale nuclear exchange with the Americans in the last war of humankind, and inclusion of North Korea into the global economic climate is key to North Korean human rights and global peace. Doloria Tel 9. Economic interaction between the DPRK and the U.S. and other countries encourage gradual transformation of DPRK's economy and foreign policy with direct benefits to international peace. Integrating North Korea would improve welfare of North Korean people by encouraging North Korea and the economic growth. The substantive benefits of the people engagement will generate vested interest in the foreign and less hostile foreign relations, cooperation, and economic development. Is a powerful mechanism to change North Korea's internal and external behavior. Economic change is the potential to induce and reinforce the DPRK's peaceful transition into a country thinking about it for after its people and engage with other countries in a non-hostile manner. And key partners will encourage trade with North Korea in the near future, so sanctions can't cause a North Korean policy shift. U.S. economic ties with North Korea can catalyze a global movement to push it in a progressive direction. Doloria Tel 9. Partners in the region already maintain extensive economic ties with North Korea. South Korea maintains a major economic cooperation project in the north and a large volume of trade. China is pursuing an even more extensive long-term strategy of economic engagement with North Korea. Russia has also expanded its economic ties with the DPRK Tokyo. They revisit that policy and economic engagement agenda is therefore in line with the long-term approach of U.S. partners in the region. Bilateral economic engagement, reinforced efforts, and sanctions don't solve North Korean nuclearization. Delaria Count 9. Sanctions will not bring about a positive regime change in North Korea's behavior. While sanctions may impede North Korea's transfer, they are unlikely to block them entirely. Sanctions can provide protection from North Korea. And contention 3, sanctions violate civilians and status. A, sanctions coerce civilians. Gordon. The sanctions against Iraq founded on the common view. Sanctions agencies have documented Iraq's exposure to mortality rates, waterborne diseases, and untreated water supplies, malnutrition, and water sectors of the population, and on the reliable estimate holds at 237K Iraqi children and 5 are dead as a result of sanctions, with other estimates going as high as 1 million deaths from sanctions are far greater than the number of Iraqis killed in the Persian Gulf War. Announcing clearly the sanctions do fully as much human damage as warfare. Sanctions themselves are a form of violence. B, sanctions use civilians as a means to achieve foreign policy objective and violent liberty rather conducially. Economic sanctions reduce economic liberties and cause unequal abuse and hardship. Sanctions treat people as a means to an end, using them to bring about social or political change. They violate equal rights and basic liberties and harm the least advantaged members of the sanctioned country. Economic sanctions do not pass the test for ethical action, and state authoritarian leaders of target states won't change policy because they're unaccountable to citizens. Stalls. Economic sanctions are designed to coerce the state and changes policies in the following manner. 1. Economic sanctions devastate the target state's economy. 2. This devastation causes citizens of the target states to suffer. 3. Suffering causes citizens of the target state to modify the target state's policies. The general failure of economic sanctions demonstrates that there is no guarantee that citizens of the target state will redrect their economic damage done to leaders who want to examine the political structure of common target states. The falseness of setting states believe the civilian population is able to modify the behavior of their leaders is made more evident. Target states regimes are authoritarian, and authoritarian regimes do not change.
Can I see the app?
Yeah.
So the only arguments that link to the standard is contention 3.
Well, if no deontological rights are violated, then we would defer to consequentialist calculus.
That's not my question. My question is the only arguments that link to your standard is contention 3, correct?
The framework of the affirmative case still gives weight things like, nuclear threats of mass casualties.
So
however, violations of deontology would come before that.
And so contention 3 is the only argument that links. The question is simple, Pat. Are there arguments in contention 1 and contention 2 that link directly to a violation of the deontological standard?
Deontological standard, as I'm defending it, would encompass consequentialist benefits so long as no rights were violated to achieve those benefits. So your question does contain that nuance, right? If no deontological rights are violated.
Right.
No, it's not threshold deontology at all. If any deontological right is violated, it trumps every other impact in the AC. However, if no side violates deontological rights, my framework still encompasses those as good, util things as good impacts.
Okay. What is the reason, what is the link from North Korea returning to peace talks and giving up nuclear weapons?
The peace talks are like the six-party talks
Right.
that would be in the direction of denuclearization. That's what the Lin evidence
Yeah,
refers to.
I guess my question is, what incentive does your evidence speak to that Kim Jong-il would have to give up his nuclear weapons?
It indicates that they have credibly issued the statement that they will return to talks in the direction of denuclearization if sanctions are removed. It indicates that the incentive to do that...
They've also
if you
said
represent-
that they must first remove sanctions before we return to peace talks. How does your evidence
Exactly.
take in that? That we will return to peace talks and trade for removing sanctions. My question is, if we keep sanctions on them, why would that not let them return to peace talks? Or why would they say, no, we won't return to peace talks?
Because they believe that we're economically isolating them and isolating them as a hostile ally. That's like the Delury evidence, and the Lin evidence also makes that claim. That's the root cause of North Korean
All right, all of your
hostility.
evidence talks about the U.S. sanctioning North Korea. Would the same impacts occur if Japan sanctioned North Korea?
Well, obviously sanctions from if Japan sanctioned North Korea.
Yeah.
I think this evidence does talk. This evidence talks about economic isolation causing them to act hostilely. So,
But it's specific to the U.S. What happens if
there'd be a risk of conflict. I mean, I would have to read new evidence in the 1AR saying that there'd be a risk of conflict.
All right, so you agree that none of your evidence...
The impact card is specific to a conflict between U.S. and North Korea.
Okay. What did the Delury evidence say? The first piece.
It indicates that North Korea needs to be included in the global economic system for them to not be hostile.
So, is that reliant on you winning the second piece of Delury evidence, that sanctions means that they won't be included?
Sanctions, of course, mean that they won't be included in the economic system.
If we're saying you can't have access to your nuclear materials, why does that mean that they are not included at all in the economic system?
Any form of sanctions by definition, isolate them economically.
All right, is it 4 or 5 minutes?
I've been using 4.
Okay.
When given the option, I always choose less prep. I think if people start asking me, I'm just going to answer with 2.